Hello and welcome to the ANPR webinar. I hope you can all hear me. My lovely colleague Reese is just setting his laptop up there, so you'll be able to answer any questions you have. The aim of today, let me just plug it in, is to run through the ideal setup for the ANPR camera that I've learned over the many years we've been dealing with it. I'll show you some different instances of what the settings would do and how to adjust them accordingly, and we'll see it in action. Hopefully you can all hear me. I'm just waiting for Reese to give me the nod that you can all hear me. He's just signing in. We had a bit of a technical issue this morning. One, our Wi-Fi went down, and two, my train from London broke down at Swindon. So I was very, very late. So apologies for the slightly later than planned start, but thank you, all of you that have joined for this webinar. I'm going to do a screen share. So the first thing we're going to do is jump straight into my desktop screen, and we're going to show you the PDF that we can send you after the webinar has finished, which will give you a breakdown of basically the suggested mounting heights, angles, some image settings, etc. So if I just start a screen share now. Share that screen. There we go. Let's close this down, close that down. So this is the PDF that you guys can receive once this webinar is finished. If you do have any questions outside of this webinar that you don't feel we've answered, or you want to speak in more depth, maybe not in the webinar, but to us directly, you can email us at technical@dbs.co.uk, and you can ask myself or Reese anything you like. So this is the PDF document. So I'm just going to scan through it quickly, but it does give quite a comprehensive overview of the solution once we get into it. Really, really into it. The angles, heights. So what you'll see, our camera it works very well up to a 30-degree angle across the plate. Anything more than 30 degrees, it starts to miss them or misread them quite drastically. So just remember, when you are installing the camera, whether it's 1 meter height or 5 meters height, whatever that may be, because it'll work at either of those heights and anything in between, it's more about the angle. So we need to try and get it as straight on as possible, and not, you'll see the camera I'm going to show you in my car park looking at the gate. You'll see it's a perfect example of what you want to try and avoid where possible. Even though it does work, it's not something I would promote actively that you guys go and do. But you can see this guide there will give you a very comprehensive overview to the capture distance, the mounting heights, the angles, the recognition, plate sizes, and etc., etc., etc. How to set it up in the web browser, how to set the gain, exposure, etc. And you can see everything is detailed nicely in there. But it's not the knowing, it's the difficulties doing, or something like that. So we're going to close this PDF down now. We're going to go straight into the web browser itself. So what you'll see on this screen, I've added the 7-line ANPR camera. Today we're going to look at specifically the 7-line product. It replaces the older 4-line product, which was an absolutely great bit of kit, fantastic seller. But as technology, hardware, and algorithms move on, we move on with them. And this gives us a higher capture rate and a higher percentage of those capture rates included. I also do have a higher end IDS TCM camera that we'll briefly look at to show you the difference. The IDS TCM range, for those of you that don't know, is part of the intelligent traffic solution. So it is more a more professional product aimed at the traffic solution, whether that's ANPR on motorways, high-speed traffic, etc., safer city projects. But a lot of people are starting to adopt these into their average day-to-day projects. That's fine. So, but we'll predominantly focus on the 7-line, even though the setup is transferable across the two models. So we're browsed into my I-Series NVR. So if you're going to use the Hikvision ANPR solution, we do recommend that it is used in conjunction with the I-Series NVR, although it is compatible with the K-Series and also some of the turbo DVRs. It's not compatible with the 7604 NIK1 NVR. For those of you that want to buy a 4-channel K-Series, you will not get ANPR function on there. So we recommend the I-Series for several reasons. The main one being the white and blacklist. And again, the white and blacklist, for those of you that don't know, is allowed or not allowed vehicles, if you want to put it simply. So we can do 2 actions based on a vehicle that is in a list for allowed, and a different action for a disallowed list. On the 7 series ANPR camera now, we can do up to 10,000 plates on there. But on the I series, if you use anything other than a I series, it'll be 500 plates when you upload the list through the NVR. So we do recommend for stability and to get the most out of the product, it is an I series. But don't fret too much, it is still compatible with the older models. So I've added it to the NVR here, and they're always online on the NVR, so we'll show you how to search and what that looks like shortly. Moving straight on to the product itself, if I web browse into the camera, you'll see they're web-based products. So we put them on the network, they're PoE, PoE Plus. We do them in 2 lens sizes, and that's in both the 7 line, the older 4 line, and the IDS TCM, 2 different lens size variants. The most popular is the 8 to 32mm lens. That gives us a longer read distance of up to 35 meters from the camera point. But some people, if you're using them on an entry-exit mode, so for barrier control at the barrier itself, the smaller 2.8 to 12mm is absolutely fine, and that will give you a shorter read range of up to 15 meters. So you need to choose the model according to the application you're using. So we offer both 2.8 to 12 or the 8 to 32. The most popular is the 8 to 32, and it's probably the safe option if you had to pick one without knowing where that read distance is going to be currently. So 7-line product, it's been out for about 6 months. I have done a separate video on that for those of you that may or may not have seen it, but we're going to run through the setup here. I've updated mine to the latest firmware, so it's quite important, again, for security, for bug fixes even, or even improvements in performance, that you update that firmware and keep it up to date. Again, speak to us at DVS and we can advise on current firmware or upgrading or not upgrading. The IDS TCM camera does use a different firmware, and that's split into 2 parts. So do not mix the 2 up, you will break the product. But when you web browse into the product, you power it with PoE, web browse into it through a normal web browser. We're using Internet Explorer because it supports the plugin nicely, but you can use other explorers, Google Chrome, etc. But I do use Internet Explorer myself. One thing to note is on the back of the 7-line camera, the relay output, the 2 relay outputs are actually built into the camera themselves. So for those of you that want to do barrier control, if it's simply lifting a barrier or you want to trigger a light or whatever that may be for your application, the relay itself is built into the camera, and there's 2 relays on the 7-line. On the 4-line, there was only 1. Okay, so we've got here the 8 to 32mm version. So we've got camera fitted on our building here, looking at the gate compound. It's the 7 series, the /P, that is dedicated for ANPR. So whenever we see that in the model number, we instantly know that that is set up for ANPR out of the box. The firmware is made for this camera. You cannot use a standard 7-line and put the firmware on there, and neither can you put standard firmware on this product because it, again, will break it. So if you're using ANPR, please use the correct firmware, and you can't go backdate it or forward date it to make it a non-ANPR camera. But the 7-line product itself, with all its clever tricks, can do standard VCA functionality as well. So we have the ability to do intrusion and line crossing, region exit, etc., like a standard product. So you can use ANPR and those functionality. But what I would say very clearly is when we set the image parameters up for ANPR, the image is very different to what you expect to be using it for VCA. So whilst it's there, it's probably not suggested, but you can do that if you so choose. Any questions so far, Reece? Or everyone seems pretty happy? Yeah. Good. And everyone, you can hear me well? Yeah, everyone. Great, fantastic. Okay, so we've web browsed into the product. You can see latest firmware. Under the metadata settings, tick the ANPR. We're not going to focus on the smart event side of it. Like I said, when we set the ANPR up, it is specifically for ANPR, and we don't focus on the VCA events. So I've ticked the metadata settings for the ANPR. Past that, general web browser stuff, you don't need to do anything specifically for the ANPR function. The first menu you need to do something for, and for those of you that may ask the question, the 7-line product is a 2 megapixel, 25 frames a second model, whereas the IDS TCM model is available in a 2 megapixel and the 4 megapixel. So the 4 megapixel IDS TCM, which is the intelligent traffic solution model, can do up to 3 lanes of capture. We can do up to 4 lanes on any of our products, but being 2 megapixel, it's really stretching its ability. And if you're using it for barrier control, it's 1 camera per barrier, not 1 camera per 3 barriers. 1, we've only got 2 outputs, so we could never do that. And 2, because of the amount of traffic that could come into a barrier, it's very highly suggested that you use 1 camera, 1 barrier. And that way you'll get the accuracy and correct read rate that you expect to deliver to your customer. So 1080p, 25 frames a second, H.265. We don't use H.265 plus. It causes other issues in the background, so we just use the standard H.265. So you set that up accordingly. Now the next most important part, and again, I'm going to show you what I use for my site, and we'll talk about what settings you can do. Pardon, I got a bit of a cold, not the coronavirus, I hope, but I'll talk around that. So let's see if anyone comments on that. What we'll say now is I'll talk through the settings. What works for me and my application may not always work for you and your application, but we can fine tune this. If you use this middle of the road setting, you'll probably find a high percentage of the jobs that you do will work out of the box and very nicely. But for those of you on this call, if you are having issues, again, some of you we're dealing with in the background anyway, but it will be tailored to your individual need per camera basis. So mounting scenario, always make sure that's selected as road and not normal. That predefines a lot of the image settings for us, but to run through those, we have to go into each individual setting. So exposure settings. So the iris mode, really, we want to lock that into manual. The default can be auto out of the box, but we want to lock that into manual mode. The reason being, if you leave it as auto, at night, you'll see there's quite a fluctuation in image read capability when headlights and glare, etc. come into play. So at night, for the best performance, because don't forget, in the day there, my gate is here, some inconvenient lorry has decided to park there, but that's our access to our property. At night, in the daytime rather, the image is absolutely fantastic. We can see number plates, no problem. At night, with headlights, either direction, whether it's forward-facing or rear-facing headlights, especially these new halogen lights, this will become an issue. Those of you that have used it will have seen this. So we always recommend to lock the iris mode into manual. Exposure time, the default would be 1/25. We start at 1/500 generally. And that lorry's going now, thankfully, or is he? Whatever he's doing. So exposure time, we'll start at 1/500. That is generally accepted for low speed traffic. For higher speed traffic, we actually increase that probably to 1/1000 and even 1/2000, depending on how fast that traffic really is going. So if it's on a dual carriage or a motorway scenario, or a road that's a national speed limit, for instance, then of course we'd use a higher exposure rate. What I would recommend is 1/500 for low speed or 1/1000 for medium to high speed traffic. The gain, little trick to do here, if you just move this bar, what you will find is it doesn't really do anything. It'll say save succeeded, but nothing actually happens. If you actually highlight the number, type in 20, which is the recommended, and hit enter, that will actually affect the image parameter and you will see that change more so at night. But just a little handy trick there, if you type the number in and hit enter and adjust the gain that way, you will get the image adjusted accordingly. So iris mode fixed to manual, exposure time 1/500 or 1/1000, depending on the application, and the gain fix it at 20. Again, we can adjust it per site basis, but these are very good basic out of the box settings. Focus, semi-auto, don't leave it on auto mode. What will happen in auto, the focus will hunt. So as cars are driving through, the camera will be continually trying to focus on that object at night, because don't forget, whilst it's a brilliant image now, at night, the image will become very, very dark and you will see a set of headlights and the reflection off the number plate. We bounce infrared off the number plate to do the OCR character read. So at night, because there's this very small object in the scene, it will focus hunt, so fix it at semi-auto. Day-night switch, again, really important settings. The day-night switch set to triggered by video. There are other options in there, and a lot of people leave it as auto or in day mode. Triggered by video does perform the best, so leave it as triggered by video, but again, we can adjust it. And the sensitivity we put up to the highest, so it goes from 0 to 7, 7 being the most sensitive. So when the daylight starts to drop, it will go into, the video will trigger the camera to go into night mode, which brings the IR on, and the image will get darker and darker very quickly. And that will combat the headlights as the vehicles move through the scene. Filtering time suggests start at 20. What this does, it stops any car. So if you've got an entry exit barrier, for instance, is a typical one, a car with a white light on it drives up to the barrier. Either the camera reads it and then opens a barrier, or they're trying to present a token or ring an intercom. The white light, after the default period of say 5 seconds, will turn the camera back into day mode. That day mode then will completely destroy all the reads moving forward until a couple of minutes later, when the camera realizes, once the car's moved out of the way, that it needs to go back into day-night mode. So you'll find it'll be automatically going between day and night mode, especially with these vehicles with these intense white lights. So we do suggest you fix that at 20. Of course, you can make it more or less. Smart supplement light is the infrared. It's the way the infrared works. So as an object gets close to the camera, if we turn smart supplement light on, the infrared will reduce in intensity, so we don't overflood it with IR and glare out the number plate. So we put the smart supplement light on. What I've done here, because it's a long read from from where the camera is positioned to the point of entry into our site, and because it's not a barrier, I've actually turned smart supplement light on, and then the mode for the IR is auto or manual, and I've actually intensified the infrared up to 100, so it's getting maximum infrared at that distance here where we're taking our read from. So again, because of the distance, it's okay, we're not doing barrier control. If I was doing entry exit barrier control, I would leave that as auto. Next settings, you don't have to do any of these backlight conversations, WDRs and HLC settings. The more you start messing with settings beyond this point in the image settings, the more it will affect the read in the daytime and at nighttime. So they're the only critical ones that we have to adjust, and they're the ones that people don't really pay attention to, and that's where the misreads or no reads come into play. And the rest of the settings, just to show you, are standard CCTV settings, but we don't have to do any. The only thing we'll change is it to outdoor, but by default it is set to outdoor, so you should only just have to check and not change. Okay, everyone happy with that, Reese? Isn't any questions? Seems to be happy. Okay, great. So just to show you, in the event section, they do have the smart events in there, but we aren't going to use any of them. Like I said, daytime, you'd get away with it. At nighttime, that VSA event will be pretty useless because of the way the image works. And for those of you that haven't used our product, in nighttime, it will be a very, very dark image. So next menu down is the road traffic menu. This is where we set up and test our ANPR configuration. So the first menu we go into is the detection configuration, and out of the box, this isn't enabled. So we have to enable it and draw our detection area. So 2 types of traffic detection. We've got vehicle detection, which is looking for vehicles with number plates. If a vehicle goes past with no plate on there, say the number plate isn't detectable, or it's just simply not got one, it will make an indication in the NVR log to say no plate. So whilst there isn't an image of the plate itself, because it's not there, you will still have a saved image of that plate, of the car without a plate. So it's still at least a reference shot. Mixed traffic detection is for bikes and pedestrians. So if it's in a hard shoulder, for instance, and you want to detect if a pedestrian or a moped or something is in that area, we can use mixed traffic detection, and it will also detect when those are in there. A lot of people walk through this field of view, so we're not interested in that mode. It would be continually triggering. So vehicle detection is the one that most people will use. We simply enable it. Then you will get 2 borders. You simply draw the borders to suit. So it doesn't really matter to what happens, there's two modes, which I'll go into slightly after this, but you draw the borders where you need, so across our gate, and you have a blue trigger line here. This blue trigger line is being introduced not only on the 7 line, but on the 4 line. What it actually does is it tries to improve the accuracy of the captured image that we store in our database. It's not solely based on that's the trigger line, so a vehicle has to go over this line here to be detected, and that is what it's the trigger for the image that we capture to optimize the performance of the captured image. So we move that because it's a gate, and that's where we're trying to capture vehicles across there. It's very easy to put that there, but again, we just move that where suitable in your field of view. There's two modes on this camera, as you can see there. There's city, street, alarm input, or entrance, exit. Entrance exit is normally used when it's on a barrier for short read. So if we had this on an entrance exit barrier, you would primarily use entrance exit mode, and it's when the plate is presented in a large format to the image. And by large, I mean the vehicle is approaching it head on, so it's mounted at pedestal height, head on, a big image of the plate. That's when the algorithm copes best with that. If we're using it on a pole or a wall like this, city street mode works better because the plate size is much smaller and the distance of the reads are much longer. You can use entry exit on that scenario as well, and it does work, but there is some improvements to make on there. So we recommend city and street for the longer, smaller plate reads, entrance exit mode for barrier control, and that will give you the best performance out of the box. The country region, we've set it to Europe region general, but you can specify a country or region should you need to. Now we're out with the EU, I suppose we'll have to drop that, but we'll probably leave it in the short term. So arming schedule, moving on. So draw the box, or draw the border, the demarkers, draw the trigger line where it's best, but don't forget that's not the part that's going to stop it from reading. As long as the vehicle is presented within this box here. So when we draw the lines actually go from top to bottom. Even though I've drawn a sort of a box area, the capture area is all the way from top to bottom there, and all the way from top to bottom there in city street mode. In entry exit mode, you will see, I'm not going to change it. If you change the mode, the camera has to reboot, which would add 3 or 4 minutes to this webinar, which none of you really want to do. But if I change it, you'll see same principle. You draw the lines where you need, but actually then defines a box area, still with the blue line, and that is the detection area. In city street mode, we draw it along, say, the road, and anything that comes into that area from top to bottom will be detected and captured. Under arming schedule, we've got whitelist, blacklist, and other list. As the NVR, as we said earlier, the NVR is able to do the whitelist and blacklist. The camera itself is able to do the whitelist and blacklist itself, so it can be used as a standalone product. We have quite a lot of clients that use these for car park monitoring with barrier control. They simply install a 3G, 4G router, connect the camera to it, and they download the list from a central location to the camera, and it works in isolation. You can put a SD card in the camera, which can record video clips and the plate capture, so the information can be retrieved later. So that's, again, another process of it working autonomously. I actually said it this time. But you can set the whitelist, blacklist, and other list independently. Whitelist is allowed vehicles, blacklist is banned vehicles, other list is any vehicle that isn't in the two, which is normal day-to-day traffic. So again, all our lists are default 24/7, and that's how we're going to leave them. What you can also do is set the direction of the read. So you can set all these lists are set to all directions, so it will read forward and backward. But again, if you're using barrier control and you want to control the way the camera detects a number plate, so as a car leaves, you don't want that number plate to be picked back up and then raise the barrier behind it again, which could cause a security site entrance problem. We can actually force the camera to do a forward or reverse read on any of those 3 operating modes. So it's a very, very powerful function. And you can also set the operating times. If you're only allowed to operate between certain times, you fill that in accordingly. Then you can upload to FTP card, and you can trigger the correct output as you need. So like I said earlier, the outputs are built into the camera. A whitelist could trigger output 1, which would be open the barrier. A blacklist control could trigger output 2. which would be a siren that would alert the person they've been detected, or a sign or something, and then they would have to leave site, hopefully. But that's the process of that. Okay, I think I've covered that well enough. A little hint and tip, if you are going to trigger an alarm output built into the camera, again, a lot of the support calls I get involved in is the camera doesn't operate the output. This thing is terrible. Go into event and basic event, go to alarm output. And by default, I've actually enabled it, but by default, what you'll find is you're presented with a blank schedule for the alarm input. So no matter what the camera tries to do, because the alarm output schedule is blank, the alarm output will never fire. So always fill that in first, and then if you do use the alarm output, it is going to work. So back to the road traffic. So that's how we set up our simple detection. And I know this is probably taking sort of 20, 25 minutes, but in reality, this does take minutes. If you set one up, or if you have done, you will do this in minutes. And the more practice, the better you will become. So under picture, this is default. We don't have to do any adjustment in here whatsoever. And it's highly recommended that you don't. The only thing that if you do want to, the way we send an image either to our software or to a third-party software, we ingrain data into that image. And that will be the device number, capture time. Direction is not enabled, but if you want the direction, plate number, camera info, camera number, and validity. And you can change the way that's presented within the image. It's a snapshot image with all of that info along the bottom in black, but you can either turn them all off or change the order or only put the relevant stuff on there. A lot of people don't use that. The only ones where it becomes really handy is when you search for it in an NVR, it'll be ingrained in the image itself. And you've also got the FTP picture name as default, or you can put a custom one if you've got a preferred FTP custom name that you need to use. But other than that, you don't really have to touch this menu. Moving on to the camera menu. Again, there's nothing really to adjust in here. Wait for it to catch up. The device number, so if we put DVS HQ and click save, and then camera number 101, camera info test, that is the information it will pick up and use within the image that the picture image settings, the menu we were in previous to this. So you can adjust that accordingly. It doesn't affect the operation of the camera whatsoever, so it's entirely up to you. White and blacklist. This is where if you are using a white and blacklist, we can export from here, fill the list in, and then import it back. I do want to show you that very, very quickly. So the way this works is, I've already got a plate in there. So export the white and blacklist and save it to my desktop. It's proven that Excel does work best. For those of you that don't like Microsoft, maybe it's time to invest in it, because we have a lot of issues with people that not using Excel where the format of the cell isn't correct. I'll show you quickly where that is, but I do highly recommend you use Excel. Once we've downloaded the list here, we open it and it'll open it in as an Excel template, and we simply do this. So we put a plate number 2, I've already got one in there. When you input a plate number, it's important you do it with capitals and no spaces. If you put capitals in there or spaces, it won't register as a plate in our system. You simply then choose 0 or 1 for white list or blacklist. So if I put 0 in there, and then the expiry date. So this would be if the plate expires. So if it was for barrier control and you wanted this plate to expire after a certain day, on a certain month, on a certain year, you wouldn't put that there. If it's not critical that you're using it for barrier control and you're just using it for blacklist, you don't have to fill the expiry date in. It'll give it a never-ending one, but you can limit it there. Then we simply save it. If any of you are having trouble with using a non-Excel product and the list isn't working, the thing you should look for is into the cell itself, right-click, format cells, and it should be a text cell. On every single one of these columns should be a text. What happens sometimes with older versions of Excel or third-party Excel style sheets it puts it to general or number, and they don't work. When you save that and import it, it'll either fail to import or it will import, but no action will be triggered from the list. So it's important that you do that or check that, but Excel is fine. Reese is nodding. He's had a lot of those support calls as well. Once we finish with that, we've saved it. We go back to our whitelist blacklist, and we simply browse for it on the desktop. Click import. And look at that. It's done it for me now. I must have saved it wrong. Let me quickly do it again. Oh, it's there. I was using the wrong one, wasn't I? And that's the price list. Let me open it back up. I don't know. I must have done something really bad. Whenever you do a live demo, they always go wrong, don't they? It's me bragging about Excel, and then it didn't work. Yeah, I'll do desktop. Let's give it one more go before we move on, because it'll just be very embarrassing. But this is the process. 10:04. For God's sake. Okay, massive apologies. I don't know what I've done to my Excel now to break it, but yeah, I must have changed the format of the cell somewhere, but that's how you do it. It does work, I promise you, but today it chose to show me up. Moving on very swiftly, under real-time LPR result, that's where you do your system check to make sure the system is working. If you ever want to either commission it on site or web browse into it and check its reading. Firstly, you actually need to enable the real-time LPR result, and you don't have to tick the country region, but if we can detect the country and region from the plate, we will display that. What you'll see then is you'll get a live image of the video and then lots of previous plate captures there, up to 20, but it's just really for a visual check. So you can check direction, it's from other list, the country, if it's detectable, and then you can see the number plate there. So you can start comparing it. So these are from today and some from last night. So you can see number plate image, plate. So it's actually so far quite accurate. Even ones on a skew seems to be doing really well there. So yeah, even that one on a skew there seems to be doing well. This is more for you guys for installation and commissioning. This is not really an end user function. What the end user would do if you want to pull plates off is use our dedicated IVMS 4200 software. You add the product to there, whether the SD card is in the camera or through an NVR. The NVR or the SD card can then present and pull all this information into the IVMS 4200. You don't want your end user web browsing into your product because they'll likely damage it. Is there a question? You looked over at me suspiciously.
No, Connor's made a good point that you're saving the Excel as the wrong format.
I was, as I?
Yeah.
I don't feel very well. It's this coronavirus. So yeah, there we go. I saved it as the wrong format. It was something stupid. When you're under pressure, everything falls to bits. Thanks, Connor, for pointing that out. You won't be having any help moving forward. So that's the 7-line product itself. Again, on the NVR, if I just show it to you on the NVR, we'll log in. That's auto logged out quickly because we have got this one added. Now this is a different password. I need to make sure I remember this one. Okay, great. So anyway, feel sorry for me. I don't feel very well, but I did make it back from London this morning specifically to do this for you guys. So under the picture format, choose our camera. So we'll look for the deep learning camera we're just looking for. Vehicle detection. You can look for a specific country or just search all. You can look for a specific plate number and you can look for a start time and an end time. So if we look for Sunday, click OK, click search. It'll go through now and search all of the data, all of the captured images that have been saved from our camera. So for instance, if I want to look at this one, click live view. This is the image. There's the plate. And if you look down there, there's the plate number ingrained in there. When you download the image, remember saying the still image we send with the black information, it's embedded down in the bottom there, so you'd see it on there, but not on this instance. Let's see if we can find well, that's what that no plate does. So because it's dark, that's what you would expect in the dark. You can't really see any of the image. I know that's outside, you can see the white line markers, but that is what the image will look like at night. Very unusable for CCTV purposes. So we probably suggest if you need evidential quality CCTV to cover the vehicle, color, etc., then you probably should install an overview camera to back this up, because this is all about getting the best performance out of the technology, not an all-round solution. Let's look at something. Is there any from... We'll go on the compounds a lot, but what we have got is those of you have used the IDS TCM camera. Now I have to be careful because this thing's in the way a little bit. Move that out of the way. So this is the IDS TCM camera. For those of you that may have used one, it's based on the older web browser format. You can see it's a different color scheme, but the technology is very, very good. Do not let this web browser fool you in any instance. I'm not going to go into this one too much because it's a higher end product. The accuracy, the read rate and the speed are all much improved over the 7 line. Even though the 7 line is incredible and the go-to product, this is a different beast altogether, but it does cost a lot more. What you'll find with this product is the firmware is split into 2 parts. We've got a firmware that updates the actual firmware of the Hikvision device, but we've also got an ALG algorithms library. We can update the algorithm library separate to the firmware. So it's a 2-parter on this one. Very complicated, lots of integration. So we've got TCP serial port, all these different integrations with different systems, and the Hikvision ITS traffic solution system and traffic management server. So this is a product that would integrate for, it is based around safer city, smart city, all that kind of technology. But the principle is the same. And the application mode, you still draw the line demarkers. You still have to go to capture parameters. But I don't know if any of you noticed that in this camera, the 2 megapixel and the 4 megapixel, we're actually able to detect vehicle color and the vehicle logo, so brand model. It's not very, very accurate, but it is sort of 80% accurate at daytime. And the car needs to be driving toward the camera for the brand recognition to work. If a vehicle is driving away from the camera, reverse direction, the brand recognition doesn't work. This is for head-on traffic. But it's getting better. Every time we update an algorithm, we take more and more data, we update it, and it does work very well in the daytime. Don't forget, at nighttime, the image performance is very difficult to get that color image, the color and the brand detail from it, but it does try. You don't have to use that function. It's turned off by default, but it's a nice little thing if you like that kind of thing. We've also got alarm host config, so for third-party support like Zatpark, etc. Under the image parameters, still very similar to what I said with the 7-line product. You still have to go through, enable certain things, but this camera, because it's a professional grade product, there are more settings that we can adjust to get the accuracy required. You can see this is fitted at about probably 6 meters high, I think, on looking over our entrance road into the DVS office. Some of the people who drive down there drive incredibly fast down there. I've driven, I must say, in case there's any law enforcement people on here, out of hours with nobody on the road very quickly, and it picks you up every time. Even with, so I've got I don't know if any of you saw the video I did. I had that extremely powerful LED light bar on top of my truck. Even with the light bar on, it read the number plate absolutely perfectly. So it is in a different league, but we can talk to you about that. It's mainly project based. But again, we still have to set the function up on there. And what we'll do now is show you, we won't spend too much longer on that. If I show you what the performance of the IDS one is, Let's see if we got some nighttime reads. You got, yeah, of course you can. A quick question.
Jay's asked, we have a Series 4 linked to the Smart Turbo DVR that gives colour of car. Is that the DVR?
It's the DVR, the idea, it's the AccuSense. So yes, that's correct, Jay. So on the IDS range NVR and the AccuSense, it will try to do that within the DVR itself. It's not highly accurate, but it is a feature in there, and they're always trying to improve that. If you need color and make, then you should look at the IDS TCM ANPR camera specifically, rather than the DVR NVR technology. I hope that answers the question, but you are quite correct to mention that. So these are reads from today. So if you look at what this one does, look at this read here. Again, still gives you the plate. What we've done on this one is actually cropped the plate out. So it sends us an image, one of the overall plate, but actually crops the plate itself out into the image. We do that because that's how a lot of civil enforcement like their notices sent to them. So we configure it specifically to send information in a format that they like and can pull information from. But you can actually turn that off, but it is a very neat feature. Look for nighttime performance ones. Again, there's a lot of traffic on here, so we've got to go probably quite far back. Somebody's asking a question. You can have another question.
When setting up, is it best to put the required settings and whitelist in the camera or the recorder?
If you're doing it, either is the answer. So if you've got an iSeries NVR, you can do it through the iSeries NVR. If you what I would say is, if you're using a compatible NVR or DVR, I would do it from the DVR NVR itself and do the trigger action from there. There can be conflict if you put the list on the camera, but the trigger action comes from the DVR NVR. So it's one or the other, not a bit of both, but we would always recommend from the NVR DVR primarily, unless the camera is in isolation, which it can be. Hope that answers some questions. Brilliant. I'm trying to find a really dark late one. Silly clocking them. I know. Let's look for me. So if we look for my vehicle, I was not in that late. Oh, I've been a good boy. None of them. 653. Look, that's the best one. So you can see there, LN68 LXD, light grey. I don't drive a Porsche. Those of you that think I'm lavish, I do not drive a Porsche. It's actually a Ford. So you can see the Ford on there. It's definitely not a Porsche, but you can see that's the kind of nighttime performance you'll get from the IDS TCM. The 7 line does still perform very well at night. Reese is nodding. It does have absolutely great performance, but if you want that exceptional nighttime performance, this is the camera for you. And you can see there some of the other reads, and that would be a daytime read. Light blacks, and it's picked it up. So now, apart from the big Ford that gives it away to the camera, it has detected it as a Ford and as light black. So I guess really that's about all I can think of. And that's, for those of you that want to know, that's the light bar that was in the video. So you can see how well this technology really does perform. Any questions?
Connor's asked, could you show us the whitelist blacklist on the recorder?
This is okay. Well, okay, fine. So on the iSeries recorder, I presume he's got a compatible recorder. So Connor, this is just for you. Under vehicle detection, this is on the NVR. You export the whitelist and blacklist here onto the desktop, and then you import it through this method and save it. And you set the trigger actions up as appropriate from the NVR. So you set send email, notify surveillance center, trigger alarm output, and you've got your 3 lists there. So that's where you set that up, and I hope that answers the question for you. That's definitely a yes, because I've answered it. Any other questions before we bring this to an end?
Yeah.
Okay, well, for myself, I think that's all that I wanted to cover. I hope you found it very benefit. Another question.
One, yeah.
Go on.
Do you have any tools / formulas that calculate horizontal and vertical angles?
Yes, I do. It's actually on that PDF, which we can send out. I've got everybody's registration address. There is a formula on that PDF, and if you need any help, we will provide help with that, but it is documented on there to tell you how to work that out. I'm not very good at maths, so probably ask Reese that one. If that remains all, I hope you found this beneficial.
Well,
we got, go on then, question time.
They're kind of awkward because it's not necessarily on us, but like, what is the GDPR with an ANPR? Is there anything you need to be aware of?
That's an awkward one to answer.
Yeah.
It depends, I guess, what you're using it for. So if it's used correctly in the correct manner for just purposes, then of course there's a you know a need and a justification for it. If you're just putting it on your house and putting it on the main road just because you want to see if your wife comes back, probably not the best way to use it. But a lot of people use this technology. If it's in your own property for entrance exit, it's private ground. So again, that's very difficult. Very, normal, but you should always display the correct signage, make people aware, etc. But I think the guys on here are very, okay with doing that anyway.
Okay.
Anything else?
A couple more, yeah. Again, this one's kind of on hype, but is it possible / plans in the future to change the whitelist blacklist from IDMS?
Yeah, it is in process, but we can do it through Hike Central as well. So those of you that want a software-led function where you can input the text data very quickly for whitelist, blacklist, either add or remove, the Hike Central is probably the best option. But I know IVMS 4200 is being looked at as to how we can make that easier for the customer as well, rather than going for the full-blown Hike Central. So the answer to that is yes, it's being looked at, but for now, Hike Central.
Okay, ready for this one?
Go on then.
On Dave's previous video, he told us to turn off smart line segments. On this section, he's told us to turn it on.
Yes, that's what learning does for you. So I've learned quite a lot. On the 4-line video, it worked better with it off. On the 7-line product, there are some people on this webinar that will be intimately involved with some of the stuff that I do. I found it does work better as a generalization now to use that setting. Again, if you turn smart supplement light off, it actually wouldn't affect the read that much, to be honest. So you wouldn't see a detrimental effect, but I tended to do what I just did in the webinar, turn it on and set it like that, and then work backward if there is or isn't a problem. I find it as a general go-to base setting, how I apply it to everything I get involved with, it works the best to do it. So you're quite correct to pick me up on that, but that's what learning and educating yourself does. And many, many, many hours of testing.
Someone mentioned that when trying to turn off the reverse function, it's turn off both directions.
I've not seen that myself.
The only thing I'd comment on that is.
So is that on a 4-line product? So for the question, if you use reverse read on a 4-line product, even though the function's there, the camera algorithm isn't very good at detecting the direction of the vehicle. So in that instance, if you've got a 4-line product, it's probably not recommended to do direction of vehicle, and you should use the 7-line product in that instance. It is the 7-line. Okay, drop us a line at DVS technical at dvs.co.uk, and we'll have a look at that. That's not normal. It could be a firmware that we need to update. Oh, there is another thing quickly for those of you that don't know. If you're on the latest firmware and you've seen a bit of a weird quirk, especially those of you that are testing, if you on the latest firmware, baseline firmware, I have got a firmware to fix it, so you can email us and we'll provide it. There's a 4-minute window, a timer window. So when you test your car and go back to look at the results and drive through multiple times after, it won't read the same car for around 4 minutes. Nobody knows why they put that in there. It's being removed on the next baseline, but just so you're aware, it's not a fault of the product. You don't have to take it out or send it back as faulty. Ask us for the firmware that removes that 4-minute window, just for any of you that have been caught out or are frustrated with that. That's quite important.
Can you output to a smart wall screen when a white or blacklist car is red?
Through Hike Central, yes. Is that it? Excellent. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. If you've got any further questions, please, or comments or some suggestions, please email us technical@dvs.co.uk and address it to Dave and Reese. We'll answer anything you've got, and hopefully you enjoyed the video, you learned a lot, and we'll see you very soon for another webinar. From me and Reese, it's a goodbye and enjoy your day.